Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thanks for stopping by. Of course, tomorrow we've got a big event with the Central Bank Governor, Patrick Girogi. Looking forward to that tremendously. We'll beam it live to the world via a live link that's been kindly provided by Safaricom. That link is on the front page of rich.co.ke and on Rich Wrap-Ups and essentially on the kickoff at about 10 and end at midday tomorrow Kenya time. We serve breakfast from 9:30 and therefore you're most welcome to come then ahead of the start. Of course, the Central Bank Governor was feted at the African Development Bank recently, where he was named the Central Banker of the Year, deservedly so, and he said, "I dedicate this award to the youth of Africa." If you're interested in his profile, that's on Rich Freebies under Guest Writers. He holds a PhD degree in economics from Yale University, a Master of Arts degree in economics, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from the University of Nairobi. Joined the central bank from a varied career at the IMF, spanning 20 years in Washington, D.C. Prior to his appointment as governor, Dr. Girogi was advisor to the IMF Deputy Managing Director from December 2012, where his responsibilities included assisting in overseeing the IMF's engagement with a large swathe of IMF members. Served as Deputy Division Chief in the IMF's Finance Department, IMF's Mission Chief for the Commonwealth of Dominica, and in other capacities since 1995. If you haven't had a chance to look at the interview I did a few days back, please take a look. We touched on so many things, but it's a useful, I think, primer for the main event, which is going to be tomorrow. He's erudite, he's literary, he's transparent, and he's ahead of the curve. And he calls it his new normal. And going by the results I've seen from the banks, the Q1 results, that new normal is now a fait accompli. The last Mindspeak session, of course, we had with Joshua Oigara, with Habil, and with John Gachora. A link of that discussion is there as well, and they also spoke about the governor. Macro thoughts. The big speech today is by Janet Yellen. Of course, the bigger speech is one I've just been listening to, which is President Obama at Hiroshima, and I'll come to that in a moment. I like this quote from Boris Pasternak. "It is not the object discovered that matters, but the light that falls on it." And the Hiroshima story took me to Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow. If they can get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to worry about the answers. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed once or twice, guessed and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. Yet they do move forever under it, reserved for its own black and white bad news, certainly as if it were the rainbow, and they its children. And then unrelated, of course, but equally powerful. "I dreamt that I have found us both again, with spring so many strangers' lives away, and we so free, out walking by the sea, with someone else's paper words to say. They took us at the gates of green return, too lost by then to stop and ask them why. Do children meet again? Does any trace remain along the superhighways of July?" And then final quote from Pynchon, "Know the one word that rips apart the day." If you want to convince the other side that you have won the argument, you have no argument, says Nassim Taleb. US, I'll put up a photograph of Hiroshima and just refer you to an article I read in NPR. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was late for work. It was August 1945, and he just finished designing a 5,000-ton tanker for his company, Mitsubishi. He was heading to the office to finish up, clear out, and head home. And that's when he saw the plane high up in the sky over Hiroshima. He watched it drop a silvery speck into the air, and instinctively, as the science writer Sam he dove to the ground and covered his eyes and plugged his ears with his thumbs. And then I'll give you one more quote from Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow as screaming comes across the sky. It has happened before, but there is nothing to compare to it now. Politico is saying that's how President Obama will redefine Hiroshima. He's an incredibly accomplished speaker. If there's anyone that the US needs to give these sorts of speeches to, it is him. Politico says a president who's never shied away from moral complexity steps onto his most challenging stage yet. Americans have not always relished scrutiny of the atomic blast that decimated Hiroshima, Japan, on August 6, 1945. No sitting president has ever visited the city. And in 1996, the United States and China rejected a Japanese proposal that Hiroshima become a World Heritage Site. But on Friday, Barack Obama's motorcade will pull up to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial, and the world will pause for a moment to contemplate what happened here. He said many things. One of them was, no religion has been spared from believers who believe their religion gives them a license to kill. And that's my fundamental issue with all these folks. Their souls speak to us and ask us to take stock of who we are. And then there was this photograph that was published by Jonathan Ferro at a G7 meeting. Jonathan tweets, as if Abe is speaking, what the F-U-C-K are we looking for? And he answers his own rhetorical question, inflation. That was rather clever. The US is dropping calls for Assad to go because the Syrian regime is a better bet than ISIS. Well, we could have told them a long time ago. The Americans seem to have left the air bombing to the Russians after complaining about it. Putin is not afraid to say the obvious, that the government is a better bet in Damascus than ISIS. We shall see who wins. We do absolutely have to go with what we've got. That pretty much sums it up. If Lying Ted and Lightweight Jeb sound familiar, it's because nobody else uses language quite like Trump. That's very true, and it's worked marvelously for him, hasn't it? The data behind Trump's Twitter takeover, a very interesting piece in Politico magazine, and they've gone through the corpus of Trump tweets since the inception of his Real Donald Trump account and examined what's distinctive about Trump's Twitter behavior. After some filtering and data loss, this amounted to about 15,000 tweets. Some of our findings, including about some of Trump's favorite and most distinctive words, appear in their graphics. Just how much attention has Trump received on Twitter as a candidate, we wondered, and what is linguistically distinctive about how he tweets and what he tweets about. Trump, it turns out, has a really unusual way of talking about his opponents in the race and elsewhere. If Lying Ted and Lightweight Jeb sound familiar, it's because nobody else uses language quite like Trump does. And whatever else his candidacy has accomplished, it shows that running for president is amazing for your Twitter presence. Real Donald Trump's following has grown predictably. His social media influence has absolutely exploded. Consider that in January 2015, the average number of retweets of one of Trump's tweets received was 79. But by January 2016, the retweet average had shot up to 2,201. So while Donald Trump's capacity to reach people directly, i.e. his number of followers, has only doubled, the dissemination of his average tweet increased by a factor of 28 over that time period. Linguistically, how do these tweets look different from other candidates based on our analysis of Trump's syntax and that of the other four remaining candidates? We found that Trump leans towards adjectives more than anyone except Bernie Sanders. Nasty, for example, was reserved for Hillary Clinton, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio. Cruz being the primary target. Weak, shared among Jeb Bush, Clinton, Carly Fiorina, and Rubio. Lightweight, aimed at multiple targets, was especially used against Rubio, Megyn Kelly, and Jon Stewart. It's clear Trump's Twitter feed offers him a tool for direct access to voters, who then amplify that access by retweeting him at remarkable rates. Trump's use of Twitter is likely to be studied in future years by political strategists. The data we have so far suggests that something sui generis about real Donald Trump that likely isn't replicable. It's very interesting. Sorry, I went through all of that, but I'm rather interested in linguistic analysis. In fact, once, a long time ago, I analysed Osama bin Laden linguistically, and that was another very interesting story as well. If you're interested in the optics, Grade Trump, the graphic analysis of Trump's Twitter history in 5 slides has been provided by Politico as well. Thursday's meeting is the fourth between the Lavrov and GCC ministers, and as I said, going to Doha, seeing what the GCC was thinking gave me a deep insight, and really I did not understand how visceral the sense is. And then Israel News tweeted this about the Iran deal. It's a cartoon, but obviously quite powerful, I thought. Let's move on to international markets. Leaders attended the first outreach session on May the 27th, 2016 in Japan. I'll put up that photograph from Getty. Abe said Abenomics is not a failure. And Holger asks, really, and posted this, so have a look at that. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 111.74, dollar index 95.24, Japanese yen 109.67, Swissy 0.9906, the pound 146.28, that's falling back from levels above 147 recently seen. The Aussie 0.7218, so hanging in there for now. India rupee 67.075, South Korean won 1179.85, the Rial 358.26, Egyptian pound 882.20, and the Rand 15.5180. I'm going to take a look at the gold price and start fretting in a moment. Dollar index, I'll put up a 1-year chart. I'm bullish the dollar. We will have setbacks like we had for a few sessions earlier this week, but ultimately I think we're going higher. 93 remains the key level for the bulls. And although we broke down through it, we're back above it now. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 1-year chart of that. It's been churning around a lot, but I think, there is a risk of it breaking down now below 110. Japanese Prime Minister, commodity price decline comparable to that following Lehman shock. Have a look at the chart. You can see that the upturn has been relatively shallow, although obviously we've seen a huge rally in things like the price of crude oil. Bullion has come under significant pressure for immediate delivery, fell to $1,211 an ounce, lowest price since April 1st. The bulls are capitulating. It's down 2.5% this week, set for a 4th weekly drop. That's the longest run since November. I'll put up a 1-year chart. I know I was bullish above 1250, but now I think the tide has turned. Brent crude topped $50 for the first time since November. I'm sure all the shorts have capitulated now, including myself, but let's see how long it can last above there. Not very long, I imagine. In the short term, the rally is looking technically strong and may have a couple more bucks in it, said Clayton Rogers. On a longer term horizon, however, I think there are some fundamental headwinds which could cause a pullback into the mid-40s. I think he's correct. West WTI touched as high as $50.21 before settling at $41.48. It's now below $49 in pre-market trading. Saudi Arabia killed OPEC and buried it, a senior OPEC source from a non-Gulf producer said. I spoke about this in 2014 when I said it is the US that is the new price setter for the oil markets, and that this is a deep and important geopolitical development. Emerging markets SAMA, that's the Saudi Arabian Monetary Agency, has asked lenders to explain why they are offering dollar-real forward structured products to customers. I know the answer, because customers want them. Real forwards for the next 12 months rose to 590 points, the highest since February the 19th, according to data compiled by Bloomberg, signifying increased speculation of devaluation. SAMA is asking banks to explain the rationale and relevance of the structured products for the economy and explain why they've entered into the products without informing the central bank, according to the people. It also wants transaction details of the derivatives since January 18. Sub-Saharan Africa, let's move on, but let's first touch on North Africa. Bouteflika did everything he could to stay alone on the throne. He didn't prepare for a changing of the guards. We are at a real impasse. He's not been well for a while. A lot of speculation building up there. Former oil minister Chakib Khalil positioning himself to replace him. So there's a lot of speculation. Zimbabwe's president, Robert Mugabe, has granted amnesty to all female prisoners except those on death row or serving life sentences. Police officer was stoned to death, protester shot in Congo's Goma. This is the continued battle for the street about which I've spoken about previously. Police officer was killed by stone-throwing protesters, and a protester was shot dead in the city of Goma in eastern DRC on Thursday at anti-government demonstrations, a UN human rights official said. Timo Muller, who's tweeting from there, Congo police and military deployed across Goma today as opposition took to the street to protest. They fired tear gas, Congo police fired tear gas to disperse the protest in the capital. And the opposition said we occupied two main roads and the police are now trying to disperse us with tear gas. Jean-Lucien Husser. And then I'll put up another photograph of demonstrations in Goma, eastern Congo, and one of police blocking protests with tear gas and force across Congo today, including firing at them in some towns. South Africa has passed a land expropriations bill. If you're interested in knowing the details of that, that's on Al Jazeera News and on Rich Wrap-Ups. I concluded by saying the South African President Zuma might go nuclear on this issue because it is incredibly popular. Apparently he has spent £370,000 of state cash on 11 cars for his 4 wives. And interestingly, with all the domestic build-up of pressure, he's been travelling a lot. And the city press posted this: President Zuma has in recent weeks hit the ground running, they said. South African All Shares firm, it's up 7.03% year to date. Dollar rand, when I looked last, 15.52, but I think we could see a big sell-off at any moment. Egyptian EGX30, it's up 7.5% this year. Africa Confidential leads with this: it would be hard to concoct a worse conjunction of calamities than that facing President Buhari as he prepares to mark his first year as president on 29th May. Talking about he will use the opportunity to extol the government's success in driving Boko Haram Islamist fighters from the northeast, and to celebrate some successes in his anti-corruption campaign. He will also detail how much the government has retrieved from Western banks, billions of dollars stolen under General Sani Abacha's regime and its successors, and how those recovered funds will be spent for the public good. Some of this year's rising tide of economic woes, such as crashing oil and gas prices, China's slowdown, and rising international rates, are not the government's fault. They have nevertheless eclipsed much of the enthusiasm for Buhari and the All Progressives Congress since they won power a year ago. I'll put up two photographs, one of President Buhari and a link to his message, Children's Day message, and another one which was a quote from April the 3rd, "We're determined to get things done properly," he said. United Airlines has cancelled its Nigeria route, ending its only flight to Africa because of weakness in the energy sector and difficulties in collecting money from tickets sold in that country. Daily route from Houston to Lagos had underachieved for years, but was kept alive because of its importance to Texas-based customers. United Continental Holdings, Inc. Said in a note to employees, repatriation has been a significant issue, as has been the downturn in the energy sector. The Nigerian all-share surged 2.18% yesterday, has closed at a 6-month high, and is up for the year, up 0.82%. Quite a turnaround of late. Ghana's Stock Exchange Composite Index down 11.25% year to date. Mozambique said to be hours away from default as talks stall. Grace period for a state-guaranteed loan given to Mozambique's asset management after it missed a May 23rd deadline to make a $178 million interest payment will end on Thursday. Person who answered the phone at Mozambique's finance ministry referred questions to a phone number that didn't connect, while a second call was cut off when Bloomberg called 4 times, seeking comment. The yield on Mozambique's Eurobond rose 33 basis points to 17.1%. Just get your head around that. That's a dollar running yield. I'll put up a photograph from Maputo that I took as the evening fell. This was taken in June the 3rd, 2014, which feels now like an eternity ago, when Mozambique was the poster child of the IMF and the Africa Rising narrative. IMF's managing director Christine Lagarde said the secret government borrowing was clearly concealing corruption. That was to BBC Radio. I'll put up a photograph of Madame Lagarde, myself, and my Hannah, which we took on the 6th of January 2014 when she came and did a mind speak. Liberia, America's outpost of financial secrecy. Very interesting article. An investigation by Finance Uncovered has exposed little-known offshore business registry that has created tens of thousands of anonymous companies and registered them to a non-existent address in Monrovia. Although these companies are technically a creation of Liberian law, management of the registry is based in the United States and appears to have the support of the US government. Companies can be purchased online, often near total anonymity to their clients, allowing them to hide assets without fear of being caught by law enforcement or revenue authorities. Among other things, Finance Uncovered's investigation discovered over £500 million of high-value London property registered to Liberian offshore companies. Tanzania's government, by gesture, a president who looks good but governs impulsively. This is in The Economist. When opening parliament after his election last year, Tanzania's President John Magufuli repeated a campaign promise. Parents would no longer have to pay for secondary education. And when I say free education, I indeed mean free, he assured MPs. This year, the government started expelling foreign workers without proper permits, including thousands of Kenyan teachers. Schools that were already straining to cope with a huge influx of new pupils are now at breaking point. The president, nicknamed the bulldozer, has delighted Tanzanians with an anti-corruption drive and public displays of austerity. Within weeks of taking office last November, he had banned all but the most urgent foreign travel for government officials. He's purged 10,000 ghost workers from the public payroll. The Economist is saying, however, he has a worrying tendency not to think things through. Take, for example, his efforts to extract more tax from people using the port of Dar es Salaam, a gateway for the region. He has enforced VAT on the costs of moving goods that arrive at the port overland to neighboring countries, such as Zambia and Malawi. Shipping firms have immediately switched routes and now unload in Kenya, Mozambique, or South Africa, leaving a once bustling harbour almost empty. Magufuli remains popular with ordinary Tanzanians. Twitter users at hashtag What Would Magufuli Do celebrate his thriftiness by suggesting amusing things he might approve of, such as wearing a cat instead of buying new clothes. The president mended fences with neighbors too. In April, Uganda decided a $4 billion oil pipeline would go through Tanzania, scrapping a previous agreement with Kenya. A month later, Rwanda decided to build a railway to Dar es Salaam instead of the Kenyan port of Mombasa. What Africa needs is strong institutions, not strong men or women, says Zito Kabwe, an opposition leader. The Economist again, instead of addressing these deeper structural issues, Mr. Magufuli has continued to live up to his nickname of bulldozer. One foreign firm was given 7 days to settle a $5 million bill, says its boss. The country's revenue authority then took the money directly from its bank account. By contrast, the government is painfully slow to pay its own bills. It still owes the same company $30 million. Acacia Mining is owed $98 million in VAT rebates, and effectively an interest-free loan to the government. So a little bit critical really, but I think President Magufuli has shifted the EAC centre of gravity south with his big wins with the pipeline to Tanga and the railway. This is a big-time geopolitical success in my view. Regarding his modus operandi, I think you missed the point, but if he damps down on corruption, there will be no stopping FDI. And I said this morning, he's gone for the Kenyan jugular and how. Take a look at my article I wrote on the 16th of May, the geopolitics of pipelines in East Africa. And I said then that Magufuli has shifted the centre of gravity for East African oil and gas south in one fell swoop. In my humble opinion, he's moved with speed, precision, pared the price of brokerage charges. He's winning. It's time for serious soul searching, I said. I'll put up a photograph of him and a photograph of ruins of a buried city, possibly Raptor, is seen from a helicopter in February 2013. That's just off the Tanzanian coast. And then the typical scuba experience in the Zanzibar archipelago puts divers face to face with whale sharks and sea turtles. Kenya Commercial Bank reported Q1 earnings yesterday. Interesting, customer deposits expanded by 6.631%, profit before tax up 6.112%, earnings per share for just Q1 up 6.066%, total NPLs up a whopping 30.722% to 26.36 billion, loan loss provisions at 12.60 billion, up 38.376%. The bank has operations in 7 African countries, and bad loans increased to 26.4 billion shillings. Set aside provisions of 1.37 billion for sour debt, twice what it did previously. Central Bank of Kenya governor says the industry's non-performing loans were equal to 8.2% of total loans in April. Diamond Trust reported a 9.532% expansion in Q1 earnings per share, but total NPL and advances, they hiked 257%. to 6.39 billion. Loan loss provision went up 116.24% to 3.54 billion. I&M reported Q1 earnings as well. Profit after tax was up 10.3% year on year, but the same story going through. Kenya shilling lasted a 10-month high of 100.65. That's why I call it Teflon, the Teflon shilling. Nairobi All Share up 0.05% year to date. NSE 20 down 4.18% year to date. Obviously, The NSC was very quiet yesterday, but interestingly, as I told you, I went to the doctor and I saw the president come out and speak rather impromptu just outside the doctor's office, and I think that was a clever political response to the fact that the opposition have really taken ownership of the street, and he's trying to reassert that now. Well, let me leave you at that. It's pretty long and verbose, I apologise for that, but we're at Mind Speak tomorrow. We serve breakfast from 9:30. We're on the ground floor. It's going to be a biggie. I hope to see you there. And if you do come and introduce yourself. Thank you so much.